thirst for flesh. Burn their wood, incinerate dreams. Ashes rise, every kind consumed. Innocence lost, whose darkness and fire. Crimson rivers drown their light. Molestation of sanctuaries, desecrate every glade. Twisted laughter, echoing doom. Gore-stained soil beneath us. Unholy sacrilege, fairy tears, infernal carnage. Relentless, barbaric lust. Shadows spread, very graceful. Eternal. Molestation of sanctuaries, ashes rise, every kind consumed, innocence lost, to darkness and fire, crimson rivers drown their light. Molestation of sanctuaries, desecrate every glade. Twisted laughter, echoing doom. Gore-stained soil beneath us. Molestation of sanctuaries, desecrate every glade. Every glade, twisted laughter, echoing doom. Gore-stained soil beneath us. Drown their light. Molestation of sanctuaries, desecrate every glade. Every glade. Twisted laughter, blowing doom. Gore-stained soil beneath us. Unholy sacrilege, fairy tears, infernal carnage. Relentless, barbaric lust. Shadows spread, broken soul. Gore-stained soil beneath us. Beneath us. Beneath us. Unholy sacrilege, fairy tears, infernal carnage. Relentless, barbaric lust. Shadows spread, very good small. Eternal. Beneath us. Unholy sacrilege, fairy tears, infernal carnage. Relentless, barbaric lust. Shadows spread, very good small. Intestinal stress. We don't eat dwarves cause it tastes like shit. We wanna meat and bone fresh. Don't eat dwarves cause it tastes like shit. Wanna be fair, the flavor's gullible. don't convert to tastier morsels. They can't be worse now. Rotten and derelict, putrid and gorge, acid, gritty and grotesque, chronic intestinal stress. We don't eat dwarves 'cause they taste like shit. We want our meat and bone fresh. Don't eat dwarves 'cause it tastes like shit. Wanna be fair, the flavor's gullible. Let's gather in solemn communion, summoning finesse, demonize. Twilight clothes, run aroused, possess their minds of too loud. Approach the demon, approach the demon. Unto Loco, misfortune desired, unstuck strength. Trophy to burn, until London to swallow eastbound. Divided by a black pack to die. Listen the slow horn. Do not end the showroom. So it is done. You want a fickle speaking vice, taking up one aberration, yearning realized. Set free from that doom, unto the unholy gloom of dark night, where screams decay soon swallow the fear, taking supreme goddess, queen of eternity love. Phantom tide, about agility, her horrors of stray ages, pleasures unturned in sexual vastness, celestial queen of void, approach forever. Avalon, sustain a lust, submitting excavation madness, insatiable beyond comprehension, insatiable endless lust, swallow the demon. Free from that doom, unto the unholy gloom of dark night, where screams decay soon swallow their fear, taking supreme goddess, queen of eternity love. Of eternity love. Agility, her horrors of stray ages, pleasures unturned in sexual vastness, celestial queen of void, approach forever. Taking supreme in God's queen of the son of earth, approach forever.
Yeah, I'll show the game loop. Thank y'all for the comments. I appreciate that. I had a lot of fun making this, so it's really kind of hype that people think it's anything worth considering, so that makes me happy. There can be only one Highlander. Alright. Someone said they wanted to see the game code. Everything is, with the exception of the shaders, everything is in one file. Yes, I'm using shaders. I'm open to suggestions, but fair warning, there's not really active planned development on this particular title. However, I can easily see myself growing it in the future. This game was made specifically for this game jam, and I enjoyed making it, but I also have learned a lot about good code organization and like how difficult things become to manage over time as you kind of grow things. But the good news is like it's in a state where you can pretty much just like start adding features, and all the code's on GitHub. So here's the core loop right here. Literally these four functions. Oh God, so I thought about mouse controls, and that's certainly an option. And actually on a previous stream I talk about the difficulties with making diagonal sword swinging, right? Like there are actually some technical challenges involved in doing that out the box. One of them is about proper collision detection, right? So as it is, like, it was already kind of like a pain in the ass to like get up and down sword movement working. Left and right was dead easy, but there's some interesting problems that you face when it comes to rectangular rotation with regards to like taking a texture, right? Like let me see if I got Sprite open. Let's see. Yeah, I got Sprite. Wait, no, that's the wrong thing that I wanted there. Let's see. Okay, so let's talk problems with collision detection in a diagonal context, right? I'm open to ideas. If you have good solutions to this problem, absolutely, right? Like, so let's hop over to Sprite for a moment. Let's see. Notice, first of all, that I have two different sprites for sword. One of them is sword up and the other is just sword. So here's our sword. As you can see, it fits nicely inside of a 8x5 area. And it's very easy to rotate this upward, create a second sprite, right? Now, the reason I did it this way is because in attempting to do a simple 90-degree rotation, this actually creates some problems. One of the problems is that collision detection is largely based off of rectangular intersections, right? Like, you can tell if a dot is inside of a square very easily, and you can tell if another square is inside of another square very easily, or if they intersect. But when it comes to rotation, this messes up the bounding box that represents like where on the screen a particular texture gets drawn. And oftentimes I separate out like the logic of like drawing the texture from the actual mechanics of the game. So, and this ends up being kind of like a convenient design decision, because then I'm not having to like intermix gameplay mechanics with like the actual display of the graphics. So reducing the problem away from like the graphical representation, because in a way that's a separate problem. Like as an example, actually, we could do a sample rotation right now. So like in the default context for a lot of different stuff that I'm doing in my other game, Project RPG, the way that I save the files locally, there's a lot of padding on either side of a particular object, right? The reason being that a lot of things that we want, actually we want to sit inside of a nice 8x8 area. So like, let's create a new thing and do like an example here, right? So we're gonna take this, make a black box, right? And maybe even just, maybe even get some white lines going down so that we can kind of like see the rotation in action. So if we take like some space around the box, and this kind of like creates a nicer thing for us to rotate. Let's see. Sounds like my dog just woke up, so we're gonna be stepping out here in a minute. Okay, so like right here, if we take this and we drag it, we can actually perform a real rotation, right? But this creates a problem for us, right? So if we create like a little red bounding box here, actually as a separate layer, all right, we're going to be right back. Grace. Here, let me give y'all some music while I'm gone.
Kingdoms
All right, I'm back. Um, so as I was saying about rotation, like we can kind of get something like this pretty easily just by like doing a 45-degree rotation, but we have a separate problem now, right? The bounding box representing like the position on the screen where the sprite is actually being rendered according to raylib doesn't conform to the rotation. It actually retains its position. Let's see, whereabouts. 1, 2, 3, 4. Oops. So like 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 4. So the bounding box never gets rotated along with the actual texture that's being rotated. So this creates a collision detection problem, a big one, right? Because me, as the game designer and programmer, want really accurate collision detection if I'm going to have collision detection in a game at all, right? And I'm not experienced enough to have solved this problem yet already because I've pivoted away from shoot 'em ups and physics-based games. I'm coming. My dog wants me to sit next to her, so I'm gonna move my microphone and keyboard to the couch. Okay. So yeah, as I was saying, this creates an interesting problem that I have to deal with now. Or I would have to deal with it if I was still working on this title. But I do want to revisit it in the future, and so thinking about it and figuring it out would be really kind of cool. But the only thing that I've figured in my head without actually sitting down to write code to do it yet, is that I would have to essentially like do a calculation on a rotation, right? So like if I have a rectangle and it's got x, y, and it's got a width and height, then we can calculate the positions of like the top right corner, the bottom left corner, and the bottom right corner. And then we'd be able to keep track of like essentially like, you know, given the origin to of that particular rectangle, we would be able to do a manual calculation on each of the points representing the corners, and then do like a point based like intersection calculation to see if after the rotation whether or not a pixel from another entity collides with that one. But at the same time, this seems really computationally expensive, and it also seems like the kind of problem that Box 2D was solving when they created their system. The problem is that Box 2D is a fucking nightmare to work with if you've ever sat down to try and fuck with it. Like, it's got some weird parameters and ways of dealing with things that I don't fully understand why they have to do it the way that they do it. Box 2D has some weird thing in it where it's like they have you enter like a number of simulations to run on like a frame by frame basis, and that's like how they like approximate or calculate where like things should land or how they should move based on different properties of the object with regards to like how quickly it's falling due to its weight, or you know how much angular momentum it has if it's spinning, or if it collides with another object, like effectively almost like doing like a multiple worlds quantum fucking parallel universe type calculation, where in one of these universes the box collides with the other box and then falls down and, you know, slides through some sand or some shit. Like, bless you. Got a big sneeze. Gesundheit. Oh, I got my cat behind me. He's chilling. I can't lean back, otherwise I'll sit on him. Okay, let me move the code back to my big screen. Did you want me to keep talking about my code, or let's see. Oh, the BRB's gone now. Okay. If you hear me wheezing or anything like that, I apologize. Don't be too concerned. Part of my condition is that there's a lot of pressure on my joints, and sometimes things don't sit what I would describe as properly. I have to do a lot of stretching and cracking of bone and joint and stuff throughout the day. And when things are really not sitting right, shit presses in on my lungs and on my neck, and it fucks with my like air passages. And as it is, I grew up with fucking childhood asthma, so like this shit's like baked on top of that. Okay, I guess I'll run through the code. It's really not that much. It's literally 2,096 lines, including comments. Here's all our includes. Very straightforward. The top three come from C, and in C++ their equivalent is basically like time.h becomes ctime, stdlib becomes cstdlib, standard io.h becomes cstdio. When you first learn C++, they show you iostream, but honestly, iostream is much slower for like writing out stuff than just straight up like printf, right? So then we have the actual C++ STL data structures that I wanted to use. Unordered map, in my opinion, is just so goddamn fucking powerful. Like, you have no idea. Okay, so and then we have raylib and raymath, and I don't even think I'm using raymath. So we define a macro that if I specify a flag when I'm building on the command line saying that this is for the web, then we also include mscripten, which allows us to write C++ code, build it for a web browser, and then allow you, the person watching this, to run or play whatever you want. When I was 17, if you had told me that 22 years later you're going to be doing C++ to make games on the web, I would have been so fucking hype. I would have been excited as fuck. I would have stuck with C++ the whole time and not done anything else. But in the last 22 years since I first picked up C++ in high school, and like at the very beginning of my programming journey when I really didn't know fucking shit, there was a lot of critical knowledges and things that I didn't know how to do, or I didn't even think about needing to do, because I didn't have anyone really pointing me in that direction. Even in situations where like I finally got like mentors and people who like, teachers and stuff that like knew way more than I did. It's very often whenever I was in a computer class, I just kind of float to the top without trying. It is like I love this shit. I wouldn't be doing it still if I wasn't like into it, right? Let me read the chat. Okay, what does map and unordered map do? So map and unordered map are not part of raylib. They're part of the C++ standard template library. And basically, it's a long story short way of introducing, like, if you've ever worked in JavaScript or Python, there's dictionaries and objects, right? In JavaScript, an object is basically a dictionary. And in Python, a dictionary is basically a hash map. And a hash map in C++ is basically an unordered map. And if you understand what a hash map or a hash table is, it's basically an array, but it's an array with certain properties. Like, typically you have some sort of indices for each, position, because naturally there's a one-to-one relationship between, like, the start position of an array in memory and where some other object in that array sits, which is the offset from the beginning, and thus that's the index, right? So with a hash table, you don't necessarily insert things in order, because what you do is you have a key into the hash table that you jump to. Basically, it's an index that you calculate based off some other value. And usually you have like a hash function to like determine what that indices is. And that's kind of like a low level, like really basic, without getting into like the mechanics of like dealing with hash collisions and shit like that. That's basically what a hash table is. And what this allows us to do is, like, in the beginning of computer science school, they teach you a lot about searching and sorting. And then eventually they introduce hash tables. And hash tables are great because they have big O of 1 lookup time for whatever it is that you're trying to access in it, generally speaking. In other words, it's a constant time operation. So it's very predictable. And this ends up being incredibly great in the context of game development. Because when you're having to deal with large numbers of objects and entities on screen, you have to have a very efficient way to like manage them, right? And lately there's been this kind of step away from object-oriented programming, not only in like game development, but also in like traditional development, like web development. Like a lot of people are stepping away from object-oriented languages and moving towards like less object-oriented ones like Rust or Go or let's see, PrimaGen's doing Elixir recently, I think. So everyone's got like a different flavor. A lot of people like creating their own new shit, going out, trying it out, and I'm certainly capable of making my own language too if I really wanted to. But the only reason I haven't is that I haven't encountered a problem that it would actually solve for me. It's more like nice to know that I have that capability, but at the end of the day, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And the only real problem that like I could see it solving is like wrapping a lot of code that I otherwise write on a regular basis in C++ or some other language in order to like make doing something else easier, which is just really a form of scripting. And at that point, you can always just like, typically, like every language is Turing complete, you know, so it's like one of the really interesting things about Rust is like I'm starting to understand lifetimes a bit, which is one reason I was thinking about looking at it again. There's something appealing about having a compile time guarantee about something. But for any instances in C++ where we can get away with doing compile time guarantees, we're going to try to. As far as what OS I'm on Linux, specifically Debian Linux. So, and I'll show you where we declare some unordered maps, right? But we have all these defines representing, you know, essentially values that I either, you know, calculated out or just, you know, decided fuck it. The texture management system is entirely based off of like assigning a integer to like each texture. This way, whenever I'm dealing with a particular entity, I can say, is this entity type orc? And if it is, then I can go, okay, well, let's draw the texture for the orc, right? So there's like a very clear one-to-one relationship that we're able to define that makes it easy to kind of stitch things together. And so it's like if you have an idea for a new thing, all you have to do is load the texture and then set up the infrastructure around the new object or thing that you're defining, and then implement the mechanics, and then implement the places where it should be drawn, and then test it, and then you're good to go. That's how you build features in a nutshell. So I built out all these features, and honestly, like, I slacked off a lot during development. I played far more Skyrim during this game jam than I did actual game development. Not gonna lie. But most of its development I actually streamed. I have 6 parts, you know, totaling several hours worth of programming and gameplay and testing. And you can start from part 1 and actually watch my process and see how I grow the game to where it is now. And a lot of the patterns that I kind of apply here, I use in Project RPG, my other game. You know, I'm already thinking about a third one, or rather, I'm thinking about like a re-implementation of sorts. Maybe. I probably shouldn't. I should probably keep working with that code base. So, unordered map, we actually get to here. So we've got lots of maps, lots of unordered maps. So each one of these represents a different property on each entity. In other words, a different component. So the way that I think about entity component systems is like, if in object-oriented, you define all of the properties on the object itself, then in entity component systems, you like take those properties and then reorganize things in a way where the individual entity is now just like an integer, right? And you use this integer as a key to look up different values that might exist on that object. And this is done in a way where entities can have arbitrarily set properties, right? And you can take a look at which properties are available to what entities using the component table. So when we go to add an entity for the first time, we first check to see if the entity exists, which is a call to find in the lookup table. And if it exists, then we never like the find call returns an actual value that's not equal to end, which is like an iterator type thingy. There's a lot of underneath the hood shit that really doesn't fucking matter all that much, so long as you understand what's happening on top. But we go to check to see if the entity exists when we add a new entity, and if it doesn't exist, then we go ahead and assign a 0 value to that slot in the table. Because when we go to actually set properties, or add a component, in other words, what we're doing is we're doing a bit mask. So the long integer having 64 bits, each one of them representing a Boolean on or off value, we can basically assign like each index of this bit array to be a different component. So in other words, like you can set certain components on, and then we can check to see if they exist. And if they do, then there should be a corresponding entry for that entity in its associated map, right? So as an example, like the first one I usually do is name, which is a string. And we check to see if the entity exists, and if it doesn't, then we return false. But then when we're going to set name, you know, we set component, we call set component, and if the component's already been set, this will return false. So like it won't really matter. Like we don't really have to check to see what the return value is, because it's going to be okay either way. And then we just assign that slot in names of ID to be the name that we're passing in, and then we return true. To get the name, we first check to see that the component exists on that entity, and if it doesn't, then we return no name. Then we do another call to find to see, you know, if there is an entry for it in the table at all, and if there is, we return that entry. Otherwise, if for some reason we get to this line of code, which we generally shouldn't, but if for some reason the component or the entity has the name component but it hasn't been assigned yet, then we would hit this line of code and it returns no name. Similarly for set type and get type and position, get position. And then I decided to make some more granular functions to like manage the properties of the position itself, which is an X and Y, since position is just a vector. Vector 2, the raylib vector 2. Similarly, hitbox, which is a raylib rectangle. Source, which is a raylib rectangle. Update hitbox X, update hitbox Y. Set velocity, get velocity, set collides, get collides, set destroy, get destroy. So destroy is when we need to actually clean up the entity from the scene. In other words, like something's happened to the entity and we're ready to get rid of it. Like for instance, maybe its HP dropped to 0. So when that happens, we would set its destroy component to true. And then during another function, when we perform cleanup, we iterate through all of the entities in our component table, check to see if any of them have the destroy component set. And if it's true, then we actually call like remove entity from each of the different tables that it might sit in, and also remove it. Actually, I think we just straight remove it from the component table to begin with, because any entries in the other tables, it might sit in, are pretty much dead. Cleaning up every frame would be very expensive, and so removing them from the table is a very quick way to just like get them out of the scene. But to do proper like cleanup, what I would have to do is actually like set off some sort of regularly occurring cleanup task that's like not happening necessarily every frame, but maybe happens like once every n frames. HP, durability, direction, size, magnetism, all of those are components that I set. And, adding another component, it's just a matter of coming up with a good idea, creating a map for it, making sure that you've defined the component itself, and then implementing all of the places where that new component will have some sort of interaction. As an example, when you run into the merchant and you buy a power-up, like let's say you buy size. So the size component gets set on the entity when we create it. And out the gate, it's like, set to like a 1-to-1 ratio. But the size gets updated or changed based off of a constant factor, because you notice that for set size we're setting a float. So like every texture has a default bounding box, but we can modulate that using this float size. By default it's set to 1 for any new like entities, but I set it up so that like if you take an entity with just like a regular size component and then increase it, then correspondingly it gets drawn bigger on the screen. This is how we make the sword bigger, and also how I make the orc boss bigger. So then we have create player. As you can see, like first we get a new ID. Like add entity actually creates an entry in the component table for the entity and then returns whatever that new entry is. There's generally no reason it should return invalid. I'm hard coding in the texture position here, but that's fine. So like I made an effort to like generalize the rectangle here. So it's basically like you feed in the texture and then the source is just like the whole texture, because there's like no padding or anything like that. And then to calculate a position on the screen, I do this, and then we place the position, although this should really be like P to be like more clear. Hitbox. The hitbox is actually smaller than the size of the texture for the hero. I wanted it to be kind of like... You ever played Ikaruga? That's one of my fucking favorite games of all goddamn time. It's very hard. I've never, like, legit beat it. Stage 3 always gave me a lot of difficulty. Still does. And if you get past stage 3, fuck, stage 4 is just brutal. It starts to kind of get a little bit easier, but it's still, like, tricky. Like, the last levels kind of... I forget level 5, and I don't remember if there is a level 6. But so, we set all these different components, right? And then I keep track of a global ID to, like, remember which is the hero, so that, like, we can just immediately grab it without having to, like, scan the entity list. Similar process with creating the sword, with creating the bats, creating the orcs. The orcs have a little bit more intricate positioning code, as well as the bats. Because the bats are coming from the top down, and so they have they have a Y velocity but no X velocity. Similarly, the orcs have no Y velocity but they have X velocity, and the orcs in particular can spawn on either side of the screen. There's 5 lanes of movement that I calculated for them, and that's determined right here. So like there's a base Y position, and then I roll the dice and then I randomly modulate that start position, and I end up creating like 5 lanes that the orcs can come at you from. And to make things interesting, I set it up so that the merchant only spawns in the middle 3. So when shit's really starting to like go, and there's a lot of orcs on the screen, and you got to get that level up, but the dwarf is going to be in the center of the screen, surrounded by a fucking bunch of other orcs. So you're going to have to cut your way through them in order to get to that orc. Or sorry, in order to get to that merchant. Create coin, also similar. Create health replenish, which is the meat stick. So that's all creating entities. What about handling input? This is a big old nasty if statement with a lot of stuff just like shoved in there that could have been pulled out into its own functions. So this is how we like check to make sure that we're not flying off the edge of the screen. If you're pressing left, we don't want you to go outside of the box. So I just double check to see if you're within that set, and if you are, then we update your position, we update your hitbox, we update your direction, we set direction of the hero and the sword, and then we keep track of the last direction key pressed. Originally, direction was meant to solve the problem that I ended up solving with last direction key pressed, which was handling properly like what the state of the sword is in, and like when it should swing out based on like what your current like position happens to be and like where you were facing last. See, it's 1:10 p.m. I know I just took a break, but my dog's acting like she wants to do something else again. Oh, I'm sleepy. So up, down, left, right, and attack key. If you press the attack key, we have a variable setting to see if your attacking is true. This is how I manage the component durability, which I think is one of the cooler, more nuanced aspects of the gameplay. So you start off with 1 durability on your sword. You can press and hold A and leave the sword out, but as soon as an enemy runs into it, the sword will get sheathed. At first, a lot of people will think that you can, and honestly, in the very beginning, you could get away with not getting a durability up for a while. But before long, there are going to be so many enemies on the screen that you're going to have to be like rapidly pressing A a lot in order to kill dudes. And in some cases, you may not even be able to hit A fast enough. So enter durability, where when you get your first durability up and you hold your sword out and the enemy runs into it, your sword won't sheath again until it runs into another enemy, because that first enemy will cause its durability to lose by 1, so you'll have 1 out of 2 left. So there's no reason for it to go back into your sheath or ineffectively reload the sword, right? So whenever you press A to attack, we set player attacking to true, and then we update the durability on the sword to be whatever the current sword durability should be. And every time you get a durability up, that gets increased. So if you let go of the A key, you'll put the sword away. A lot of people will perceive this to be pressing, but it's actually like it's not checking if the key's down, it's checking if it's pressed. Which I feel like it makes it really kind of a smooth gameplay experience. Handling the input on the company scene, the title scene, are very straightforward. Shifting scenes is a matter of just changing the current scene and determining which scene we're actually drawing is just basically a switch or an if statement. Once we get past the tutorial, we call init data. Init data creates the first player and the sword. When you're on the merchant screen, whenever you're selecting an item, you check to see what item is currently selected and then handle it appropriately when you select it to upgrade. So if you grab boots, for instance, we update your velocity by 0.25. If you get a health expansion, we increase your max HP by 1. We also restore your health, and then we set that back to the hero's HP. So now you have more HP. Sword size, similar. We just grab the size component for the sword, increase it by 1, and then reset it. And then same thing for magnetism. We just increment magnetism value for the hero by 1. And then we charge you. We take some coins away based off of the coin level up amount and the player level. We add that to the coins spent. We set a flag that, yeah, we've leveled up. The merchant should no longer spawn after you visited him once until the next level up. And then we swap back to the gameplay scene and we play a sound effect. And then pressing left and right handles just changing the item selection. Where am I from? I am from Texas. That's how we do it down here in the South, y'all. We like to roll our own. We like to do stuff from scratch. We like to DIY. We like to talk in country twang. Even though this ain't naturally how I talk, this is kind of something I'm making my voice do right now. Because I know it'll be a little bit more entertaining for you folk if I talk like Texan. You know what I mean? Let me take my Dogo out real quick. Okay. Okay, title. Oh yeah, so handle input literally just calls any one of these functions so we can separate out like what happens on each scene appropriately. And we have some drawing functions. Drawing the HUD is very straightforward. It's just some text in the top left corner. Drawing the tutorial, just a bunch of text that we position. Same thing with the debug panel. The company scene. really like the star field. I wanted to do like something kind of creative that didn't really matter to the gameplay for a stylistic effect. And this is what I came up with, was not only the star field but also the sun going down and also having a moon, and then also the fading of the blue sky to the black. Like, those were actually intentional design decisions, and I was pretty happy with how quickly I got something that kind of looks okay. All the drawing functions outside of gameplay are pretty straightforward. Draw merchant's kind of long because there's a lot of like positioning and selection stuff that happens. So grass I thought was cool because I actually procedurally generate the positioning of the grass textures, so that it's different every time that you actually start a game. Handling the sky was pretty. I mean, honestly, what I did for the starfield was I randomly draw a starfield texture that's kind of like rendered on the fly, and then we calculate, depending upon whether or not it's day or night, what the alpha value for the background should be, and then based off of that we clear the background color with a blue after we draw the starfield texture, which sits upon black. So like, then we draw the sun and the moon, and that's all handled inside gameplay. So like, we draw sky, sun, moon, and then grass, and then all of the different entities. So basically we loop through the component table, grab the entity ID for whatever's in there, and then we check to see if it has a position on the screen. If it doesn't, we continue. But pretty much everything does. So we grab position, hitbox, type, source, destination. And every entity has slightly different drawing code. As an example, like the hero, we first figure out which direction he should be facing. And then we also figure out what his current HP ratio is, which is the ratio of his current HP divided by his max HP. What's that? Oh. Grace, I'm trying to talk about game dev. Orc is very straightforward. We figure out which direction he's facing based off of his velocity. If his velocity is negative, then we just multiply the source by -1 in order to flip the sprite around, and we just draw it. A lot of these are pretty straightforward. No, nothing hyper complicated. But for individual specific cases where you have to do something different or unique, you're able to. Similar to how we do HP for the hero, we also do that with durability for the sword. So like as your durability goes up and you encounter like hits on your sword, the sword will get blacker and blacker. And see, drawing the frame is very straightforward. We figure out which drawing function to call depending on the current scene. Here's our texture loading code. Tell it the index into the array to assign it to, and also the path. That way we can just, every time we have a new texture, just load it up like this. Unloading textures is similarly straightforward. And then we have init graphics. Before we init the window, we set some flags to suggest that the window can be resized. We set the target FPS to 60. We load the render textures that we're going to do so that we're not constantly calling certain drawing operations. Small optimization. We set up the rectangles for the target texture, which is the final texture that we actually draw the whole game scene to before it actually gets drawn to the window. And in this case, because all of the sprites are so small, I had to zoom the camera in quite a bit. Like everything's primarily 8x8 or pretty close to there. So I zoomed in at like 8x. So a lot of this stuff is kind of hard coded in, but in a perfect world, I would go back and like restructure the code so that like the game is playable from like any zoom, right? Because then you could have like very big scenes with lots and lots and lots of shit happening. Okay, so during update state, a lot of different things happen. One of them is update state attack. So whenever you press the A key, variable gets set that says you're attacking. Player attacking is true. Whenever you let go of A, player attacking is false. So whenever the sword's out, this is what happens. If you press right last, sword will appear to your right. If you press left last, it'll appear to your left. If you press up, then we actually have to select a different texture in order to get the correct bounding box. This goes back to the rotation problem I was talking about earlier. So updating state velocity, everything that has a velocity gets updated. Except for the hero, because the hero's controlled with the player input. So everything else that has a velocity has its position updated and its hitbox updated. And if it's going off screen, and it's an orc or orc boss, enemies missed goes up. If it's coin lost goes up. And if the dwarf merchant goes off screen, we make sure that the do spawn merchant flag is still set to true, so that he reappears on the other side of the screen, so that you don't miss your opportunity to level up. Going good. Thanks for asking. If it was a bat and it's moving too low on the screen, then we make sure that we set it to destroy as well, and we also increment enemies missed. To handle the hero colliding with these different things, so if it's a bat, then we do this stuff. I actually just realized I have code here that doesn't actually need to be here. Or rather, I can change this code up here. Effectively, these two blocks are the same. And honestly, I think there's really not that much. Actually, the only real difference with Orc Boss is that we set Orc Boss spawn to false, so that, you know, not more than one boss shows up after you kill this one. If you run into a coin, we add the coin to your collection. If you run into the dwarf, we set the current scene to gameplay, or sorry, merchant game. Yeah, like the merchant scene. And we also make sure to randomize the merchant's items so that every time you show up, he's got something different. And if you run into a health item, we restore your health by 1. Spawning drops is very easy. We check to see if your health is maxed out, and if it is, then we straight create a coin. Otherwise, you have a 1 in 4 chance of spawning a health power-up when you kill an enemy. This one was kind of fun. This was getting the magnetism to work. So once you get the magnet power-up, you can move within range of coins depending on how high your magnet level is. And they will automatically be collected by moving themselves toward you. What we do is we check a calculated bounding box based off the hitbox. Right here. So actually we get the hero's position, which is the top left of its hitbox. And then we calculate, although this is a little bit hard-coded, we calculate the bounds by getting the magnet level and then moving the X and Y back by 2 times M. And then we similarly add 4 times M to the width and height. And that creates the effective area that a coin has to fall into in order to trigger the magnetism. So if something is a coin, we grab its hitbox. And if it intersects with our magnet box, then we calculate a direction that the coin needs to head in. And we update the velocity on that coin so that it progressively moves closer and closer to the player until it's collected. Sword collision works similar to how it did with the human hero collision. The difference is that here we're more checking about, like this is actually how we calculate damage. So if the sword collides with an enemy such as an orc bat or orc boss, we increment our counter to indicate that the sword collided with something. We get the enemy HP and subtract 1, and we set that HP. And then if that enemy's HP is less than or equal to 0, we make sure to clean it up in the next cleanup loop by setting destroy to true. If it happened to be an orc, we'll spawn a drop. If it happened to be an orc boss, we will spawn a like player level divided by 2 drops. So bosses occur every 10 levels. So at the first boss, you should get 5 drops. And at the second boss, you should get 10 drops. And at the third boss, you should get 15. So on and so forth. Then we decrement the durability on the sword. And if the durability is less than or equal to 0, then we set player attacking false, forcing the player to have to press the A key again. So if you're not paying attention, you're going to get hit. And you could potentially get hit very quickly and get killed immediately. So I highly recommend getting the durability power up. Name of the game with this game is get the highest score. This is our cleanup loop. If something's marked as destroy, then we add it to a special vector that informs us like which things we need to actually get rid of now. And that way we're not like stuttering through checking and deleting things one at a time, so much as aggregating all of the things that need to be destroyed in a single go and then wiping them out from every corresponding data structure. Here's what happens at level up. We increment the player level, and then we actually increment the spawn frequency. I had meant to actually tune the speed at which orcs and bats are moving to be faster and faster, but I didn't get around to that. During the update state, we check to see if we need to level up, and we also do a few things around it. If you've gotten enough coins, the merchant will show up. Then we check to see if we need to handle level up. If the merchant needs to spawn, we create the merchant. We set do spawn merchant to false so that there's only one. Make sure that we indicate that we did spawn a merchant. Similar with the boss, I use a 2 flag system to indicate when we need to spawn the boss and the fact that we've spawned the boss. This way we can control that there's only one on screen at any given time. Updating starfield texture is very easy. Updating the state of the position of the moon and the sun is very easy. And then here's the full update state where we call all of those different functions. Set diff time is how I keep track of how long you've been playing. So this is something called pretty much every frame. We could even optimize some of this at some point. There's stuff to handle loading of sound. Net audio device set. This actually was a really important line right here. Without this line, you're going to experience a lot of popping and cracking and very awful sounding audio when you're playing music especially. So by increasing the stream buffer size default, you can get around this problem. My load sound file is very similar to how load texture works. We just literally give it a path and then a position in the sound effects array. Then we start playing music. At the end of the game, when the game's closed, we unload everything properly. Here's our game loop from earlier. And we're back at the bottom of the file now. Now here's the cool part. This is how I enabled the web build. So in Project RPG, I actually have a completely separate file for handling the web build. But here I managed to get things squeezed into one. So if we've defined web build on the command line when we're compiling, then this is our main loop. Mscript and set main loop. Game loop 01. That's the reason that I moved the core of the game loop itself into its own function, was in preparation for needing to do this for Inscripted. But as a result, the desktop builds loop looks like this. So it's very clean and simple. Then we unload textures, unload sound files, close audio, close window, and we're done. And that was a full rundown of the code. Took a lot of talking though. I'm kind of drained. I gotta piss and have a smoke and maybe eat something. So give me a little bit of time, y'all.
Faster, gamer souls. Souls march.
All right. Well, the original plan here was to do some live coding to some music and just kind of chill out a bit. Who's watching right now? Okay. Because I kind of want to just like code listening to music right now. I hope that's okay. If anyone wants to chat, I'll interact with y'all in the chat. But otherwise, I'm not sure if I should keep fucking around with the way that and honestly, I do kind of want to start like restructuring things. So I kind of want to keep going in this direction. Nice. Nice, sounds good. What's up, Guitar Jams?
alive. Health meat all the time. Help me. We could eat an elf for breakfast today. One of the elves for breakfast. My motherfucking coffee. Ain't not a person in the world who can stop me. The corporate world is the devil, I am godly. As long as I got my coffee, I am the motherfucking zombie. I need my motherfucking coffee. Ain't not a person in the world who can stop me. The corporate world is the devil, I am godly. As long as I got my coffee, I am the motherfucking zombie! I need my motherfucking coffee! Ain't not a person in the world who can stop me! The corporate world is the devil, I am godly! As long as I got my coffee, I am the motherfucking zombie! Motherfucking coffee! I need my motherfucking coffee! I need my motherfucking coffee! Yeah! I need my motherfucking coffee! Ain't not a person in the world who can stop me! The corporate world is the devil, I am godly! As long as I got my coffee, I'm the motherfucking zombie! Dojo, Dark Mage in the house with the sick flow. Listening to Evil Dojo, Dark Mage in the house with the sick flow. Listening to Evil Dojo, Dark Mage in the house with the sick flow. Murdering creatures one ear, points of spears, legs sharp, drawn, mutant men steal away, screams of fright through the dark. Gods, creatures, nightmares, are they points of spears aim at us? Wiped our minds blank with contempt, cheery trust made no sense. Blood and searing heat and fire, grapes of our desires, stewed in sheepskins. Breathing laughter of green sprightly clans, sped away, fey idols cast us off, till feral creatures burn and prey and raping men hold on. Blood and searing heat and fire, grapes of our desires, stewed in sheepskin blood. Oh, pain to our kin souls, and the wild men rape our fleeing sisters. How vulgar! They swore they were lost, they swore we were frauds. Evil mongrels, they rid us of faith, they sent us their mongrels. Disgustingly suffering, but nothing so calculate. Very delicious, disgustingly different of its of a ship. Ever so big, to the to the lions, to the defeat, to the mistakes, to the hands, to the elbows, to the things but to elbows. Oh, like it's ever so, to every days, to every night, to every lies, to every face, to every sight, to every hands, to every elbows, to every elbows, to every leaves, to open news. Oh, ever so, to all the news, to all the news, none of the eyes, none of the eyes, you will defeat, you will defeat, you will recognize, you will realize, to will do this, to will do this, to will do this, for to will so. Oh, others. Not delicious. So bad, but the same legs of icebergs. good. All up in our hood, blood on our lips. Hooray for Elsis. Elsis tastes good. All up in our hood, blood on our lips. Hooray for Elsis. Elsis tastes good. Pretty tasty treat. Yo, Elsis tastes good. By the way, you're made of our favorite thing. Our favorite thing. Elsis tastes good. My neighbor is delish. Now I'm having barbecue. A meat that's never burned round here. My neighbor is delish. Now I'm having barbecue. The meat is never burnt round to violence and very children's blood. Wars of the weak with cruelty. Innocence is indigestible, they say, but we say it's delicious. We spare our brothers from a massive fight for our blood. We shall save the faith. Very flesh feels the feathers in her ardor. Their memories fill the barred minds. And the pendulous peripherals were encumbered by the white noise of their death. Until the fairies cower, secluded, and our academic kin heeded nothing. So we were weakened and saved at a rate of time. The fairies are not so different. They do drive out the weak, and so our innocence saves us. Perhaps we were wrong. Perhaps we will all fall victim to our nonchalance. Perhaps they will remember these noises. The fairies are not so different. They do drive out the weak, and so our innocence saves us. Perhaps we were wrong. Perhaps we will all fall victim to our nonchalance. Perhaps they will remember these noises. Poor feet, ground up and filth, they eat rot. Disgusting, how do you have the old dirty waste? Wolf meat, why do you eat these? They stink, musty metal shits. Crime, foul, grotesque textures, disjointed taste. Bone-meal event, they yak. It's like his age. How does one like by the theater from Peru black? They're poison. They are gross. They are UK. With all this effort we pour into this, I could have nerve my shoulders, and with nerve from nerve I can't even turn. This grotesque, it's shotgun puke in a helmet. Disgusting, progenitor of nausea, prima-inducer of scopes, Horridus. Prime architect of vomit, prime initiator of throw up. Thick skin, you should have gotten out the way. Should have saw it when you knew those trees would pay. I put an iron axe to the woods you call a home. Now you've got no merry orchard, just a grave. Dryads and naiads and elves, they are weak. Telling them apart, it don't matter to me. Quadruple density, just as God would have them be. Hit it with an axe and fell the enemy. Urbanizing the wilderness, industrial imperialists, cleansing the forest, the naturalist man. With axes of iron stood hand in hand, tinkling in mud. Little elf boys, you wish not us of the earth. Fairy, not us of the mist. Fathers of the ocean and the lifeblood and the heat. Not us, for we've seen beyond the threshold of the deep. Urbanizing the wilderness, industrial imperialists, cleansing the forest, the naturalist man. With axes of
Boots on the ground, I'm setting up shop. In the shadows where the action won't stop. Silent and steady, got my sights on the prey. One hit, one kill, that's my tactical play. Camping queen in the game, can't deny. Got my sniper and I'm aiming high. Enemies rage while I bask in the glow. Hiding in the dark, I'm the star of the show. Map knowledge sharp, I'm a beast unseen. In the bunker where the kills are clean. Patience pays off, I'm here to stay. Stacking up the score while others decay. Can't be queen in the game, can't deny. Got my sniper and I'm aiming high. Enemies rage while I bask in the glow. Hiding in the dark, I'm the star of the show. They think they got me, but I'm playing smart. Laying low and silent, that's my art. Every corner's mine, I'm the camping champ. Watch your step or you'll catch my step. Camping queen in the game, can't deny. Got my sniper and I'm aiming high. Enemies rage while I bask in the glow. Hiding in the dark, I'm the star of the show. Camping queen in the game, can't deny. Got my sniper and I'm aiming high. Enemies rage while I bask in the glow. Hiding in the dark, I'm the star of the show.